let's enter the butcher shop.
Holmes, will you explain the reason and rhyme behind this masquerade?
Elementary. We shall conduct an experiment that will allow us to answer a simple question. Does the type of weapon used by the killer correspond to a specific profession?
Alright, so... This is kind of a disgusting thing.
And here are our sow's heads. Congratulations, Watson.
You're welcome, Holmes, but what do you really want to do? Take up a collection?
So, Sherlock Holmes is going to be cutting up these different sow's heads, cutting them up with different knives, just to test to see what sort of knife Jack the Ripper is using. And, I don't know, it's very disgusting.
This wheel is broken and prevents the door from sliding.
So, I am going to use my knife on the wheel.
This wheel is broken and...
Hold on a second, do I have to move this hook first? Yes, and then this? Alright, I have that wheel now. Then I put the wheel down here.
This wheel is broken and prevents the...
Let's see, pocket knife.
This wheel is broken and...
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So this is a puzzle. It's kind of hard to figure out what exactly is happening.
There's nothing further to find in this room, Watson. However...
What's up there?
There, this door is slightly raised.
You use the knife on the top of the door, and that's how you solve the puzzle? Oh, I see what happened here. You can't see what happened because of this terrible, terrible angle. Can I get a different angle, Holmes? Will you walk away and give our viewers a different angle? Holmes? Holmes? There we go, there we go. Okay, so that hook. He moves the hook over, and then you click on the hook again. Holmes puts the door on the hook, which raises the door slightly. That allows me to take off the wheel using this knife. And I'm gonna grab this wheel.
I need something.
Well, I'm gonna use this wheel here. Use a small wheel from above, put it below. And now I can move the door. That's the puzzle. Would be easier if we could actually see the hook.
Elementary.
If we...
While I prepare our experiment, could you find me 2 knives? A small one, somewhat larger than a pocket knife, with a large, sharp blade. We'll need it to separate the bones and to cut through the thick skins. Then find me a long knife that's at least 13 inches long, no shorter, that's sharp and has a thick blade.
Fine, Holmes, but I'd like to tell you about Hardiman. Do you know that he prepares his kebabs himself, and...
That he owns butcher's tools and uses offal? That's obvious, Watson. Pray, take my magnifying glass and my rule and get started, Watson. Find me these 2 knives.
Wow, Holmes is kind of a jerk, isn't he? Well, I mean, we already knew that. He doesn't seem to like Dr. Watson very much. So this is a puzzle. We need to figure out which of the knives is the correct one.
With the rule, I must find a large knife.
13 inches is clearly this one.
Size, 13 inches.
And the other knife is this one here.
Size, 7 inches. Thanks to the magnifying glass, I can find a small knife that matches Holmes's description. Fragments of cartilage.
That's it. So it's this knife and this knife. Those are the 2 knives we need for the puzzle. We go back to Holmes and give him the knives.
Here are the knives you asked for. Be careful, they're awfully sharp. Holmes, I must say that this experiment is making me rather uneasy, comparing animal heads to these poor women.
You're right, Watson, but this somewhat shocking experiment may help to end this massacre and save other victims. You can be sure of that. Look, these pigs' heads are still bloody, which will suit our experiment perfectly. I have a pocket knife and a scalpel with me. With the 2 knives you just brought me, we have a similar array of weapons as those probably used by the killer. We saw 3 types of throat wounds on the deceased attributed to this man: those intended to slit the throat, those intended to decapitate, and the more superficial yet mortal wound that led to the death of the unfortunate victim in Dutfield's yard, Miss Stride. With the help of these 4 knives, we are going to try to recreate these wounds on the pigs' heads and see what we can establish about the weapon or weapons used. We may also be able to rule out Miss Stride as a victim of the killer of the other 3.
Okay. And then Holmes just pulled out another weapon. Actually, you know what? It's weird. Where did the other 2 knives come from? I guess he already had that pocket knife on him. And he just pulls a scalpel from out of nowhere. Great. Great. Thanks, Holmes. Thanks, Holmes. I'm going to skip over this particular puzzle in this walkthrough, because it is a very gross puzzle. There's lots of blood everywhere. And this is the solution. The solution is that the only knife which works for all 3 murders is the really large, long knife.
That's it, Watson, the big knife. With respect to the opinion of the medical examiners who noted that a butcher's knife with a long blade would have caused the eviscerations on some of the victims, we can assume, Watson, that he only used this type of weapon as it is capable of inflicting all of the wounds displayed. Furthermore, the Dutfield's yard murder remains attributable, for the moment, to the Whitechapel killer, if we are able to explain why the murderer used his knife in a different manner. Why not go there now? We will try to reenact the killer's actions that night. Our first objective will be to clarify, one way or another, the statements of Constable Smith, as well as this Hungarian by the name of Schwartz. We must also try to find out more about the International Working Men's Educational Club, underneath which the murder took place, perhaps at the Wasp's Nest.
Yes, let's go to Dutfield's yard or wherever, but quickly. I am in urgent need of fresh air.
Take a look at Sherlock's eyes during this scene. They move strangely.
Quickly. I am in urgent need of fresh air.
Let's go to the Wasp's Nest.
Alrighty, so I do not like this thing with the pigs. I thought it was gross, and, you know, it took Watson about 15 minutes to set this up. So all in all, it's like a 20 to 30 minute subplot. And our conclusion is that Jack the Ripper used a very large knife. Didn't we already know that? It feels like the entire thing was just a giant waste of time. And now Holmes is finally going to investigate the double murder. The double murder that took place last week. Remember, there was a double murder. And he was right there at the time of the double murder and said, No, I don't really feel like examining the murder right now. I'm gonna go home and do nothing for a week. Well, now he's going to examine the double murder. I wish they had cut out that entire pighead storyline and gone straight to the double murder examination.
I will try to find out more inside. You, Watson, must intercept the policeman on his rounds. Given the hour and a bit of luck, it will be Smith. Try to get some information from him.
Understood, Holmes.
It's also weird that Holmes decides he's going back to this pub for information on the double murder. Why would you assume anyone here has information about the murders? Well, I guess maybe this guy knows. The journalist. He might know something. Yeah.
Hello.
I know you. You're Squibby's guardian angel. You weren't dressed the same last time, but I don't forget a face. No hard feelings, huh? Join me in a glass?
No thank you, sir. I'm on duty.
Your Jack the Ripper is on everyone's lips and written in all of the papers. You must be awfully proud of yourself. You have skill, that's for certain. It's a shame you use it to mask rather than discover the truth.
You better believe that I'm going to find out who it is. I got a hold of old Schwartz's interpreter. You know, the Hungarian who saw Liz Stride get it. Doesn't speak a word of English. And when he went round to the station, another Jew went along to interpret. I found that bloke, and he repeated everything that had been said at the station. It won't be long before I find these fellows.
I can't believe that this drunk journalist has had more success in investigating than Sherlock Holmes has. That's because Holmes spent an entire week at home doing absolutely nothing. Come on, Holmes. Also, it's been like an hour since we saw the scene that this guy is talking about. Let me just show you that scene again.
Lipsky!
That is what Sherlock Holmes is talking about. Somebody was chased away from the site while Jack the Ripper committed his third murder.
Why do you say these fellows? Were there several of them?
Do you not read the papers or what? Well, given the rubbish that you read sometimes. Let me explain. At 12:45 a.m., Schwartz goes down Burner Street towards Fairclough on the side of the road where the Workers' Club is. A bit further from there, just near Dutfield Yard's wooden doors, a chap and a lady are arguing. The Star said that the bloke wanted to push the girl into Dutfield's yard, but the translator told me that Schwartz saw him pulling her towards the road. She doesn't want to follow. He grabs her by the shoulders and throws her to the ground. She falls. Falls a bit, but not too loudly. Old Schwartz is scared, crosses to the other side, but continues in the same direction. The bloke with the girl notices him and yells, "Lipsky!" At the same time, another bloke at the corner of Fairclough and Burner who was lighting his pipe gets in on the action. He starts coming towards Schwartz in a menacing way, and Schwartz takes to his heels, doesn't see anything else. Once he finds out that a woman got herself killed, he went to testify, and identified Long Liz Stride as the woman he saw getting thrown about. So there were definitely two blokes, mate. But why am I telling you all this?
In vino veritas.
Holmes is basically saying, "You're drunk. That's why you're telling me this."
I'll take my leave then, Mr. Bulling.
That's right. Till next time.
So that's how Holmes gets a rather thorough description of what happened during the third murder. I believe the bartender can explain a little bit more.
A draft, my good man.
Here, sir.
Tell me, was it not a mere stone's throw away from here that the Whitechapel killer struck last week?
That'd be Jack the Ripper, that's his name. Slit the throat of a working girl in a small courtyard over there behind them big wooden doors.
Below the Workers' Club?
The very spot, below Lipsky and Co. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack was one of them, if you catch my drift.
Lipsky and Company. Do you mean to say that someone called Lipsky runs this club?
Nah, it's just that it's full of Jews. In Whitechapel, we call them all Lipskys, like that Lipsky who killed that girl in Batty Street last year.
Oh, really?
Last year, a Jew named Israel Lipsky killed a lass who was 6 months pregnant by making her drink acid. One trial and one protest by rabbis later, and he was hanging. By those who don't much like him, the Jews are called Lipskys.
Is the term Lipskys used to refer to the Jews in the area, and is this club frequented by Jews?
You got it. Socialist Jews even. They spend their evenings hollering, singing. I've seen them spitting on the bosses.
In other words, Lipsky is a racial slur. In order to scare away this Jewish person, somebody shouted a racial slur at him. That's what happened.
And you know the victim?
No more her than any other. The working girls don't drum up business too much in this street. They need a reason to end up here.
Very well. Goodbye.
Cheers.
First and foremost, I must find P.C. Smith.
Alright, so that was Sherlock Holmes getting more information about the first of the two murders on the night of the double murder. And now Watson's gonna get a rather long conversation with P.C. Smith.
Good evening, Constable.
Good evening, sir.
I am Dr. Watson. Would you happen to be P.C. Smith, the man who patrols this beat?
That's me. And you work with the famous Sherlock Holmes, don't you? What can I do for you?
This man looks exactly like Constable Humphreys from the police station. They could be twins.
I believe you were on duty the night when the murder took place here. You would certainly be able to confirm a few details, such as the time of death that the medical examiner gave.
It's just that I wasn't there when the body was discovered. I don't think I can help you.
I think you could, sir. You could help a lot. You saw the culprit.
But I was told that you had seen the victim that very night.
Indeed, but it was before the murder. I saw her, not far from here. She was talking to a man. It was around 12:30 or 12:35 a.m.
So who was this man? He is the culprit, right?
What did this man look like?
I only saw him from behind, really. He was wearing a short black outfit, a small felt hat like a cap in a dark colour, and a white collar. He seemed to be a respectable type. He was carrying a packet in his hand wrapped in newspaper, about 18 inches long and about 6 inches wide.
His outfit reminds me of someone that I know. Was he a large man, on the older side?
I don't think so, no. Even though I only saw him from behind, I would say that he was barely 30 years old, or even less. Say 28, or even less. 26 years old, and 5 foot 8 inches tall at the very most. He had a small dark brown moustache and an olive complexion, I would say, but once again, I only caught a brief glimpse of his face in three-quarter profile.
So, the reason we're getting such a thorough description of this man is because he's the killer. He's Jack the Ripper. We're going to come back to this testimony later on. So that's why we're getting so much detail here.
Nobody else saw this man?
I discussed this previously with Mr. Eagle, the president of the Workers' Club. That night he returned around 12:40 a.m. to the club. He used the passage through Dutfield's yard to get into the club because the main door was locked. He can attest that he didn't see anyone else in the passage at that time, but wasn't really paying attention to who else might have been in Burner Street itself. He was listening to the song coming from the club. In short, no one else saw him.
Well, thank you for having satisfied my curiosity, my friend.
A fine evening to you, Doctor.
Aha! Holmes is done. Don't know why we needed a special subtitle telling us that, oh, by the way, it's the exact same night it was 5 minutes ago. But no matter! Are we going to talk to Holmes? No, we're controlling Holmes now. Let's talk to Watson. No, Watson.
Well, Watson, let's go to Dutfield's yard.
What, the subtitle just said we were at Dutfield's yard. Where's Dutfield's yard compared to here? Is it somewhere else? No. No, I think it's somewhere here down the street. So, yeah, that's right. Right. We just saw the scene. Yeah, I just showed you the scene of the murder being committed. It was right here. Yeah, so the murder was committed exactly in this spot. Well, I mean on the other side of this door. So let's go inside.
Your interrogation of P.C. Smith has proven to be very shrewd and of great interest. Thanks to the information I've managed to gather and that you were able to read in my notes in Baker Street, Watson, we can recreate what happened that fateful night at this location, Dutfield's Yards to be precise, the site of Liz Stride's murder.
Okay, so I really should let it go at this point, but I won't. Holmes, why did you wait a week to recreate the crime scene instead of taking 10 minutes and walking to the crime scene exactly when it occurred? Whatever. Okay, so here we go. So this is similar to a puzzle we had earlier, right? We had the timeline puzzle for one of the previous murders. This puzzle's a lot easier because it tells us it tells us when everything happened. So midnight, 12:20, 12:30 to 12:35, 12:40, 12:43, and so on. With the previous timeline puzzle we had to do. Let me see, can I show the different timeline puzzles? Nope. Well, with the previous timeline puzzle we had to do, it was actually a puzzle. We had to go through the testimonies and guess what the times were based on the testimonial evidence. Here they just tell you outright this is when everything happened. It's a lot easier when you don't have to guess when things happened. So, midnight, the meeting ended.
Midnight, the Socialist Club meeting ends. The members, mainly Jewish men, gradually begin to leave the club in little groups or alone.
20 minutes after the meeting ended.
12:20 a.m., the American leaves the Socialists Club for some fresh air. The street is deserted.
Our friend P.C. Smith was hanging around here at 12:30 or so.
12:30 to 12:35 a.m., Smith notices Liz Stride talking to the man with the package.
And as Smith indicated, the president was walking by about 5 to 10 minutes later.
12:40 a.m., Eagle, the president of the club, enters the Workers' Club via the passageway through Dutfield's yard. He passed through Dutfield's yard. If Liz Stride had already been killed, he would have had to walk over her. The murder, therefore, had not yet happened.
Yes, and now for the scene we saw. This was the scene. Israel was just walking down the area at 12:43.
12:43 a.m., Israel Sforz passes by Dutfield's yard and witnesses the attack on Liz Stride.
Yes, but at 12:44, he got scared away.
12:44 a.m., Sforz crosses to the other side of the road. The attacker sees him and yells, "Lipsky." The attacker must have shouted to his accomplice at the end of the road, "Lipsky," indicating at Sforz using his head in an attempt to scare off this undesirable.
So this is something the game will proceed to ignore. There is an accomplice! Jack the Ripper has an accomplice who scared off this potential witness. Who is the accomplice? I don't know. Holmes is not going to try to find this accomplice. I'm pretty sure it doesn't get addressed again. So I find that very frustrating and disappointing.
12:45 a.m., Sforz runs away, followed for a short distance by this man.
He wasn't chased for a long time because the accomplice was just scaring him away from the crime scene. So the accomplice wasn't actually trying to chase him or do him harm. And the body was found about 15 minutes afterwards.
1 a.m., Mr. Diemschutz wants to enter with his cars, but the pony refuses. We know that the murder took place between 12:45 and 1 a.m. Mr. Diemschutz, therefore, must have disturbed the killer. Let's place Liz Stride's murder on the timeline, Watson.
So now we know for sure when the murder took place. Well, is around here, right? Let's see.
12:45 to 1 a.m., the murder of Liz Stride. It took place in this very spot, as the traces of blood were very confined. We will come back to this point in a few moments to elaborate on what could have happened. Well, we are still missing certain information in order to finish this investigation, Watson.
Oh, something I do want to point out with the timeline. This is new, the period of time. With the previous timeline, it was all, we had to get exact times. Now we have we've got a 5-minute gap in the timeline. Or it happened anywhere between this 15-minute period. And that's cool. That's cool. I feel like that's a more accurate timeline. Okay, so we are going to examine this area, I think. Let me make sure. Watson, you're standing in my way. Standing in my way. I was trying to make sure that there was nothing for me to examine here. And there's papers on the ground, which I won't examine. There is a door, which I can examine.
This door leads to the Club for Jewish Socialist Workers.
That was the club everyone was talking about. So the murder took place right next to a club.
Watson, imagine the victim laid down there on the ground.
Oh, yuck. Blood.
Her right hand, it is bloody, as is her wrist.
And we're gonna do a deduction board. Ooh, fancy.
Her left hand, it is closed around a bag of pastils. Her knees and dress, they are clean. The ground is muddy.
Let's see, we don't look at her face. We did look
The
at the
throat,
face of the other
there
two
is but one
victims,
clean
but
cut,
not this
slightly
one.
slanted downwards.
And I think we're done. I think Holmes backed away because we're done and we can make deductions with our deduction board. We're finished with this investigation. I do have to say, it feels like they didn't work as hard on this investigation as the other ones, because this was a 2-part deduction board, and this is a 3-part deduction board, and this is just a 1-part deduction board. It's fairly simple, I think part of the reason is this is a double murder that we're investigating, so we're actually going to get another deduction board here. So I feel like maybe that's why this particular deduction board is the skimpiest, the shortest. Okay, so her area is clean, her clothes were clean, even though the ground is dirty. We are concluding that the victim was not struggling on the ground. She wasn't like rolling around on the ground or anything. Meaning she was killed while standing upright. Meaning she and the murderer were standing upright when she was killed. Okay, so the wound to the neck is clean, starting from the right, slightly oblique and descending. So right hand or left hand? Let's see, it starts from the right, so killed with the right hand. There's only one wound and it was mortal. So yeah, that was a deadly wound. The murderer struck the blow. Okay, so I do have to complain about this. There's only one wound and it's mortal. Therefore, we're supposed to conclude the murderer is the same height as the victim. I'm not sure how you draw that conclusion from the fact that there is one mortal wound. Anyway, we put these two things together. So they are the exact same height and they were standing facing each other. Therefore, we assume they are approximately the same height. That's a good deduction. Yep, that follows from the evidence. Okay, the blow was given with the right hand. That leads to the conclusion that the killer is right-handed. The blow is given with the right hand also leads to the conclusion that the murderer is strong. I don't think that follows from the fact that the murderer is right-handed. I mean, there are people who are right-handed who are not very strong. So the killer is a strong man. Bloody right hand and wrist, and her carotid, I don't know what that is. So the victim she put her hand on her throat. So if her hand wasn't cut, but she got blood all over her hand, it's because she put her hand against her bloody throat. That's what I'm thinking. So therefore we conclude the murderer, what are we concluding? It was a thin knife blade?
We have
That's
two
what we're
possibilities.
concluding. Okay.
The first is that Liz Stride's killer and the attacker, seen by Schwartz, were one and the same man. The second is that Liz Stride meets a client. After some discussion, they head towards Dutfield's yard to do their business. As soon as they arrive, the attacker appears while his accomplice keeps watch. Schwartz's arrival dissuades the two men from lingering. They leave the area and leave Liz Stride in a tense state, but glad to have kept her client. He will be her murderer. Both hypotheses are possible, but an incongruous detail will serve to corroborate one of them. An incongruous detail that we were able to establish regarding the Hanbury Street murder. Which one would that be, Watson? Look at the victim carefully, Watson, and tell me the link between the murder of Liz Stride and those of Nichols and Chapman.
Holmes is talking about the bag that the victim was holding. All three of the victims died while holding something. He is going to talk about this for a while, so I'll save that for the next video.